Zaxtel shifted uncomfortably in his seat as he prepared to address the young diplomats gathered before him. Even after 50 cycles, the memories of humanity's introduction to the galactic community made his scales twitch. "You want to know about humans?" he asked, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into standard galactic speech. "Let me tell you about the day everything we thought we knew about first contact protocols changed forever." The veteran diplomat's mind drifted back to that fateful day. The Concordet's fleet had emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, following their standard procedure. 12 warships, all gleaming with polished silver-platinum alloy, arranged themselves in the traditional arrow formation that had intimidated countless emerging civilizations before. "We were so confident," Zaxtel continued, his upper eyes closing briefly in remembered embarrassment. "We had done this hundreds of times. Show up with overwhelming force, demonstrate our technological superiority, and the primitive species would fall in line. Simple, efficient, and effective." But the humans hadn't followed the script. Within minutes of the Concordat fleet's arrival, Earth's orbital defense platforms had activated. Primitive by Concordat standards, yes, but there were thousands of them. Military satellites reoriented themselves, and ground-based tracking systems locked onto every Concordat vessel. "What happened next still amazes me," Zaxtel said, leaning forward. Their global communication networks lit up, but not with panic. We watched as their nations coordinated with each other instantly. Military forces mobilized worldwide, yet their stock markets remained stable. They prepared for war and peace simultaneously. A human voice had broadcast on all frequencies in perfect Concordat standard language. "Greetings, visitors. We are humanity, and we welcome peaceful contact. We have observed your approach and believe we can establish meaningful dialogue. However, if your intentions are hostile, be advised that we will defend ourselves with all necessary force. The choice is yours, but we prefer peace." The young diplomats murmured among themselves. One raised an appendage. "But how did they know our language?" Zaxtel clicked in amusement. "They didn't. They had observed our communication patterns during our approach and decoded our basic language structure in under 6 hours. 6 hours. Their artificial intelligence systems had analyzed our transmissions and created a working translation matrix before we even reached their orbit." The Concordat fleet had frozen in confusion. Their sensors detected nuclear weapons being readied in underground silos, yet diplomatic messages continued to arrive, each one in better translated Concordat standard. Earth's governments had simultaneously activated their military forces and assembled teams of diplomats, scientists, and cultural experts. "We had come to overawe them with our technology," Zaxtel explained. "But they were the ones who shocked us. When we finally opened official communications, they sent us detailed predictions about our likely social structure, technological capabilities, and possible intentions, some of which were embarrassingly accurate. The standard intimidation protocol had crumbled in the face of humanity's paradoxical response. They showed neither fear nor aggression, but rather a calculating readiness combined with genuine enthusiasm for peaceful contact. That was when we realized our mistake," Zaxtel concluded. "We had thought we were dealing with another primitive species taking its first steps into space. Instead, we had encountered something new. A species that had tempered itself through millennia of internal conflict, emerging unified not by conquest, but by necessity and shared purpose." He paused, letting his words sink in. "That was just our first day of contact with humanity. Things were about to get far more interesting." Zaxtel watched his audience's reactions as he continued the story. The young diplomats had moved to the edges of their seats, their various appendages twitching with anticipation. "After first contact, the Concordat did what it always does," he said, pulling up a holographic display. "We began our standard cultural analysis. That's when things got disturbing." The hologram showed scenes from human history, armies clashing, cities burning, mushroom clouds rising into the sky. But alongside these images were others, people rebuilding from ruins, enemies shaking hands, former battlefields transformed into parks and memorials. Most species we encounter have had wars, Zaxtel explained. It's normal. But humans, they turned warfare into an art form, then turned that art form into peace. They did something we had never seen before. They learned from their mistakes. He zoomed in on an image of an old military bunker converted into a museum. When we discovered they had created weapons that could destroy their entire planet, we expected to find evidence of a terrible war. Instead, we found something more frightening. They had lived with these weapons for decades, always ready to use them, but choosing not to. The young diplomats shifted uncomfortably. One of them spoke up. But that's insane. Why build weapons you don't intend to use? Zaxtel clicked his beak in agreement. That's exactly what our analysts said. But the humans had a term for it: mutually assured destruction. They believed that having weapons too terrible to use was the best way to ensure they never had to use them. And somehow, it worked. The hologram shifted to show human technological advancement. But here's what really scared our researchers. Humans don't just adapt. They improve everything they touch. When they made a weapon, they would find peaceful uses for the technology. When they made something peaceful, they figured out how it could be used for defense. Images flashed by. Nuclear weapons becoming nuclear power plants, military satellites enabling global communications, wartime medical techniques saving civilian lives. In just 300 years, they went from horse-drawn carriages to faster-than-light theory. Not because they were smarter than other species, but because they never stopped trying to improve. Even their failures taught them something new. Zaxtel paused, his scales rippling with remembered anxiety. The Concordat's final assessment was troubling. Humans were simultaneously the most destructive and most creative species we had ever encountered. They could design a weapon that could crack a planet, then use the same technology to heal their sick. They could split the atom to destroy cities, then use that knowledge to power their civilization. The hologram showed Earth's rapid advancement after first contact. Humans quickly adapted alien technology, but always with unexpected modifications and improvements. Most species, when joining the galactic community, take decades to understand new technology. Humans, they see new technology and immediately start thinking of ways to make it better. It's like they can't help themselves. Zaxtel closed the hologram, his 4 eyes focusing on his audience. But the most terrifying thing we discovered: they were still evolving, still learning. Every mistake made them stronger. Every challenge made them more innovative. And now they had access to galactic technology. He let out a small whistle that his translator didn't bother to convert. That's when we realized we hadn't discovered a primitive species emerging into space. We had awakened something that had been preparing itself for galactic civilization through thousands of years of trial and error. And they were just getting started. Of course, Zaxtel said, his scales darkening with remembered tension. Some species refuse to learn from others' mistakes. The Kavlaxians were one of them. The holographic display flickered to life again, showing a fleet of angular, dark purple ships. The Kavlaxian Empire had been a rising power in the galaxy, known for their advanced shield technology and aggressive expansion. We warned them, Zaxtel continued. The Concordat told the Kavlaxians everything we had learned about humans, but they just laughed. Primitive beings with primitive weapons, they said. We will make an example of them. The Kavlaxian fleet had appeared at the edge of the Sol system with no warning, 30 warships strong, their purple black hulls gleaming with confidence. They didn't bother with demands or threats. They simply attacked. What happened next, Zaxtel said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, became known as the 48-hour lesson. A hologram showed the battle unfolding. The first wave of Kavlaxian ships hit Earth's defenses hard. Their shield technology was unlike anything humans had encountered before, easily deflecting conventional weapons. The Kavlaxians were celebrating already. Their admiral even started composing his victory speech. Zaxtal's upper eyes blinked in amusement. He didn't get to finish it. Within 6 hours of the first attack, human scientists had collected enough data from the shield impacts to begin understanding how they worked. By hour 12, they had theories about its weaknesses. By hour 24, they had prototypes. The humans did something that should have been impossible, Zaxtal explained. They didn't just analyze the Kavlaxian shields, they improved them. Right in the middle of the battle, they were running simulations, testing theories, and adapting their weapons. The hologram showed the turning point. A small human ship approached a Kavlaxian cruiser. Instead of firing weapons, it transmitted a signal. The mighty Kavlaxian shields flickered and failed. The humans had discovered that the shield technology had a fundamental flaw. When they transmitted the right frequency, it would create a feedback loop that overloaded the system. But they didn't just disable the shields, they modified the technology to work better. By hour 36, human ships were equipped with improved versions of Kavlaxian shield technology. By hour 48, the Kavlaxian fleet was in full retreat, with a third of their ships drifting powerless in space. But here's what really shocked everyone, Zaxtal said, his scales rippling with excitement. The humans didn't destroy the disabled ships. Instead, they rescued the crews, treated their wounded, and sent them home with a message. Your shield technology is impressive. We've made some improvements. Here are the designs. Free of charge. Next time, try trading instead of fighting. The young diplomats chittered in disbelief. One raised an appendage. They gave the technology back to an enemy. Yes, Zaxtal answered. That's when the galaxy learned a new term, combat engineering. Humans don't just fight. They learn, adapt, and improve during battle itself. And then, strangest of all, they share their improvements, turning enemies into potential partners. He closed the hologram, his 4 eyes scanning the room. The Kavlaxian Empire had started the battle wanting to make an example of humanity. They succeeded, but not in the way they intended. They showed the galaxy something new, a species that could turn an invasion into an opportunity for technological advancement and diplomatic outreach. And that, he added softly, was just the beginning of how humans would change galactic warfare forever. What happened after the Kavlaxian incident, Zaxtal continued, adjusting his diplomatic robes, changed how the entire galaxy thought about power and peace. The hologram sparked to life once more, showing the aftermath of the failed invasion. But instead of scenes of conflict, it displayed something unexpected, human and Kavlaxian engineers working together in shared laboratories. The humans called their new approach constructive deterrence. The concept was simple, but brilliant. Instead of just building bigger weapons or stronger defenses, they made peace more profitable than war. The display showed a series of images, joint human-alien research stations, bustling trade ports, and cultural exchange centers spreading across the galaxy. First, they approached the Kavlaxians, Zaxtal explained, his scales shifting to a pleased purple color. Instead of demanding reparations for the attack, they proposed a partnership. Your shield technology is impressive, they said. Imagine what we could create if we worked together instead of fighting. The young diplomats watched in fascination as the hologram showed the first joint human-Kavlaxian space research center opening. Former enemies now shared labs and workspaces, combining their knowledge to create new technologies. Within 5 years, human Kavlaxian shield technology became the galaxy's standard, not because it was forced on anyone, but because it was simply better than anything else available. And they sold it at fair prices to everyone, even potential enemies. Zaxtal clicked his beak thoughtfully. But that wasn't even the clever part. The humans made sure that all their trade agreements and technological partnerships included what they called interdependency clauses. Everyone's prosperity became linked to everyone else's success. The hologram shifted to show the growing web of trade routes and diplomatic connections spreading from Earth across the galaxy. Former rivals found themselves becoming trading partners. Old enemies discovered they could make more money working together than fighting each other. The humans had a saying, peace through strength, prosperity through peace. But they didn't just say it. They proved it worked. They maintained the galaxy's most powerful defense fleet while simultaneously becoming its biggest trading partner. One of the young diplomats raised an appendage, but surely some species still tried to fight them. Zaxtel's scales rippled with amusement. Oh, a few tried. But it always ended the same way. The humans would win decisively, then immediately offer friendship and trade deals to their defeated opponents. They became famous for turning battlefields into marketplaces. A hologram showed scenes from various diplomatic meetings where humans consistently worked to include all species, even former adversaries, in their growing network of trade and cooperation. They introduced new concepts to galactic diplomacy, Zaxtel continued. Ideas like win-win negotiations and mutual growth opportunities. At first, many species thought these were tricks or signs of weakness. They learned better. He paused, letting the hologram show the remarkable transformation of the galaxy's diplomatic landscape. The humans proved that true power isn't about how many planets you can conquer. It's about how many allies you can make. They showed that the strongest position isn't having the biggest fleet, but having so many friends that using that fleet becomes unnecessary. Zaxtel's scales shifted to a deep blue of respect. That's when the galaxy learned something profound. Humans weren't just good at fighting. They were masters at making peace profitable. And that, young ones, made them more formidable than any weapon ever could. Zaxtel rose from his seat, his 4 eyes scanning the room of young diplomats. The hologram behind him showed the current state of the galaxy, a vast network of peaceful trade routes, joint research stations, and thriving multicultural colonies. And so, he said, his translator carrying his voice clearly through the chamber, we arrive at today, the longest period of peace in recorded galactic history. Do you understand now why no one dares to fight the humans? A young Kavlaxian diplomat raised her hand, her purple scales shimmering with curiosity. Because they're too strong. Zaxtel clicked his beak in gentle disagreement. No, young one, not just because they're strong. Many species are strong. The truth is both simpler and more complex. The hologram displayed a montage of human achievements. Their ships protecting merchant vessels from pirates, their medical teams helping during natural disasters on alien worlds, their scientists freely sharing breakthrough technologies. Humans are dangerous not because they can fight well, though they certainly can, but because they make fighting them seem foolish. Why would you attack a species that's more interested in helping you grow than in conquering you? He moved closer to his audience, his voice dropping to a more intimate tone. I've served as a diplomat for over 50 cycles, and I've learned that humans have mastered something no other species has. They've made peace more profitable than war, friendship more powerful than fear, and cooperation more practical than conflict. The hologram shifted to show Earth, now a central hub of galactic civilization. Around it, ships of all species moved in harmony, trading, learning, and growing together. But here's the real reason no one dares to fight humans anymore. Zaxtel continued, his scales shifting to a deep shade of wisdom blue. They're still evolving, still learning, still improving. Every cycle brings new innovations, new ideas, new ways of solving problems. And the most remarkable thing, they bring everyone along with them. He displayed statistics showing how species who partnered with humans consistently developed faster than those who didn't. They don't want servants or subjects. They want equals, partners, friends. They work tirelessly to help other species reach their level, to share their knowledge, to lift others up. A Centaurian diplomat waved its tendrils. But isn't that dangerous? Teaching others to be as advanced as they are. Zaxtel's scales rippled with amusement. That's what the Concordat thought at first. But humans believe that the more advanced everyone becomes, the better it is for all. They have a saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. He paused, letting his final words carry weight. The galaxy doesn't fear humans because of their weapons, their technology, or even their combat skills. We respect them. And yes, sometimes fear them, because they've shown us what we can all become. They've proven that the path to true power isn't through conquest, but through cooperation. The hologram faded, leaving the chamber in thoughtful silence. Remember this, young ones. Humans aren't dangerous because of what they might do to you. They're dangerous because of what they'll inspire you to become. They don't want to rule the galaxy. They want to help it grow. And somehow, that makes them more formidable than any conquering empire could ever be. Zaxel's scales settled into a peaceful blue as he concluded. That's why no one dares to fight the humans anymore. Not because we're afraid of losing a war, but because we're afraid of losing the peace they've helped us build.